I'm Dwight Drummond. Tonight, a GTA man's dream of buying a retirement property was shattered after the deal he sank hundreds of thousands of dollars into collapsed.
I'm basically killed because what I will do now? Where from I will give the bank 250,000.
Details on what happened and how dozens of other would-be homeowners are likely also out of millions of dollars. Plus,
Ontario Liberal government will reduce transit fares right across Ontario down to $1 per ride.
days away from the official start of the provincial election campaign, the Ontario Liberals are hoping to sway voters by promising cheaper public transit fares. And
we're investigating. What are you investigating? You just need to watch the video.
A Toronto woman wants accountability after recording a racist incident during an Uber ride with her black friend. Nearly 30 townhome house buyers are set to lose a combined $2.8 million they put down as deposits for two Richmond Hill developments. Now, the projects from Ideal Development were canceled last fall after the developer was charged for illegal vending, then refused a building permit licensed by the provincial regulator. As Ryan Patrick Jones explains, some prospective buyers are out tens of thousands of dollars.
These renderings show Ideal Development's vision for a community of 72 brand new townhomes near Yonge Street and Bond Crescent in Oak Ridges. Hasmukh Patel bought in pre-construction, thinking it would be the perfect place to retire with his wife.
Realtor, they told us that if you could deposit 250,000 right now, then at the possession time, give me extra credit of 200,000.
The 61-year-old borrowed $250,000 from a line of credit for his deposit, but construction never started and the project was canceled last fall. Ontario's home warranty program only covers $100,000 of Patel's deposit. He says the remaining $150,000 is likely lost.
I'm basically killed because what I will do now? Where from I will give the bank 250,000? Whole of my life, with my pension money, with my wife pension money, everything will be going to bank.
The Boss Luxury Towns project was aborted after the builder was charged with illegal vending by Ontario's Home Construction Regulatory Authority. Ideal Developments allegedly operated without a license, although those charges haven't been tested in court. Now the builder's secured creditors are selling the land through receivership to recoup their investments. And it appears there won't be any funds left for the 28 buyers who put down $5.4 million in deposits, with $2.6 million of that unprotected. Real estate lawyer John Zanatti says a lack of protection is a red flag for buyers.
That's one of the first things we look for. Are you getting security for your deposits?
Yen Hui Fa is in a similar situation, but with a different Ideal Development project. He put down $250,000 for a townhouse at Major Mackenzie Drive and Lennox Avenue. But the Richmond Towns project was also canceled in October. Fa is now suing to try to get his deposit back.
It has been extremely stressful. I do have a girlfriend. We want to get married and also start a family, but now everything is on pause due to the fact that we're down $250,000.
Zanatti says more and more pre-construction projects are failing because the Greater Toronto Area's red-hot real estate market has enticed new developers into the field.
That's when you have a greater likelihood of these types of situations where a builder maybe doesn't have the experience to handle the financing and build the project properly.
Ideal Developments declined to answer specific questions because the matter is before the courts. But its founder said in an email, "We will continue to do whatever we can reasonably do to assist the purchasers with respect to their interests in the subject properties." Meanwhile, buyers are losing hope they'll get their money back. Ryan Patrick Jones, CBC News, Toronto.
Thousands of construction workers are on strike today after contract negotiations fell apart over the weekend. The job action will impact the building of both low and high-rise buildings right across the GTA. Alicia Son has the latest on the labor dispute.
It takes many different trades working together to build a building. If any one of them strikes, you can expect project delays. Well, today, 15,000 residential construction workers walked off job sites at both low and high-rise buildings.
So high-rise forming is that sort of critical structural concrete work that you see apartment buildings being formed from. That's what our members do. Those sites are all shut down. And the low-rise side, obviously house framing is currently on strike, and no framing will be occurring basically throughout the GTA because of this strike.
6 bargaining units with Liuna Local 183 have rejected their contract proposals after their collective agreements expired on Saturday.
Fundamentally, it is about money.
Inflation, the cost of living. The union representing the striking workers says they deserve higher pay. On the other side of the bargaining table,
I am a bit surprised to hear that is an issue.
ResCon, an association representing residential builders, notes that money didn't seem to be an issue with the other trades.
There are 6 trades that are essentially on strike right now, but you do have about 20 that have already settled. And, we would think that offers within that settlement range would be accepted.
The labor union argues their members really stepped up during the pandemic when residential construction was deemed essential, so employers should pay up.
We didn't ask for pandemic pay. We do not have a work from home option. And as a result, we thought that our management partners would show their appreciation this round of bargaining, and they haven't.
It's only day 1 of the strike, so both sides are still optimistic they'll come to a resolution sooner than later.
And then we can get back to building the houses that, everyone in Ontario needs.
Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
The weather is beginning to heat up, and as summer approaches, the city kicking off the Cafe TO campaign again. The mayor says the program, which began as a pandemic initiative, is now a permanent staple in Toronto.
We know that residents and businesses have both come to love and to enjoy Cafe TO. For the residents, it gives them an additional chance to be outside and dine and have a drink at the same time. And it gives restaurants an opportunity to expand their offerings and to grow back their revenues.
More than 200 Sidewalk Cafe permit applications have already been processed, with more coming each week. There's no fee for businesses who want to submit an application, and the city will match funding for half the cost of improvements such as decks or fencing. Mayor Tories will be one of the names on the ballot when Torontonians vote in a municipal election later this year. Today, prospective candidates got a chance to register for the election. Talia Ricci now with a look at some of the familiar and new faces that will be running.
And you have identification?
Oh, yeah, sure.
It comes as no surprise that John Tory was among the first to file his papers this morning. He's seeking a 3rd term as mayor of Toronto, an announcement he first made back in March.
Just a couple of papers, and the hard part begins.
If Tory wins, he'd also gain the title of the city's longest-serving mayor. But he's not looking that far ahead yet.
I have a police board meeting to attend today and a regular day as mayor.
Hi. How you doing?
And he's already got some competition, like Tony Luck.
I motivate more people to vote, especially Chinese and Asian community. And by also running for the candidate for the mayor of Toronto, I also set an example for the younger generation.
But Luck's run for mayor may be all uphill.
It's not so much about how much money you can raise. I mean, that helps certainly, but it's just familiarity.
This municipal politics expert says the cards are often stacked against anyone trying to defeat an incumbent.
Whether it's a mayor or whether it's a local councillor, and whether it's in Huntsville or Toronto or wherever, I think it really doesn't matter. I say an incumbent has had the history of getting her or his name out there.
My final city council.
Former councillor Joe Cressy stepped down from politics last month. He's thrown his support behind former TDSB trustee Osma Malik, who was also early to register as a candidate in his old ward, Spadina-Fort York.
There's so many different issues that have been revealed through this pandemic, and we need excellent representation at City Hall, new voices, a new generation of folks.
Longtime downtown councillor Kristen Wong-Tam is also not seeking re-election. Instead, she's running as an NDP candidate in the upcoming provincial election. Wong-Tam has endorsed Chris Moyes, who's throwing his hat in the ring to replace her as Toronto Centre councillor.
I've worked very hard as a trustee for the last 6 years, bringing change to the TDSB, using an equity lens. I do hope that this council is more diverse than the current council.
Now, more candidates could still enter the race. Nominations close on August 19th. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Leafs fans have had a lot to cheer about this year. They have the NHL's top goal scorer. They won more games and earned more points than any Leafs team before them. So could this finally be the year they break through in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Greg Ross joins us live from Scotiabank Arena, where the Leafs kick off the postseason tonight. And Greg, there's one big problem: the two-time defending Cup champions.
Yeah, that is a big problem, Dwight. And if this is going to be the year that the Leafs finally get over the hump and get past the first round of the playoffs, maybe go on a bit of a playoff run, well, it is not going to be an easy road. Starting here in the first round, having to play the Tampa Bay Lightning. As you said, the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. But the Leafs say all they're focusing on right now is the present. They're focusing on this series at hand, and they're not thinking about their past playoff struggles. Leafs coach Sheldon Keefe said he could feel the buzz around the locker room this morning.
Excited, relaxed. I think they're just, looking forward to playing.
But it didn't take long for the questions to come.
Back, the puck still loose, Kucherov score!
About the fact that this team has not made it past the first round of the playoffs in 18 years.
We recognize what's at stake and what we're trying to accomplish here and what we need to accomplish for our fans and for our city. Yet we keep the focus on what's happening within our walls and with our team.
Past the past, nothing you can do to change it. We're just excited to be here and it's kind of the here and now.
That's knocked out by Palat. For Maroon in, shoots, goal!
The two-time defending Stanley Cup champs say they won't be taking the Leafs' past playoff failures for granted.
Sure, there's pressure on them for sure. Probably a lot of pressure this year because of the team that they have and the quality of players and, the season that they've had.
Austin Matthews, 1 goal on 34 shots in the series. Empty net, Tyler Toffoli scores.
The disappointments of the past are something that fans are also trying to put behind them, especially this.
Montreal Canadiens are headed to Winnipeg for the second round.
Despite having a 3-1 lead over the Montreal Canadiens last year in the first round, the Leafs still lost in 7. How long did it take you to get over that disappointment from last year?
Few months for sure, but then as soon as the regular season started, they started winning again. Forgot about it in the past.
And while the past has them nervous about the present, fans say they're still confident.
Different year. I think they stand up to a challenge a lot better.
We got Austin Matthews.
Austin Matthews scores!
I think that's all you need. Austin Matthews, AM 3-4. AM 3-4.
Morgan Riley?
Yeah.
1 year they've got to do it. I think if there's a year, I think this will be the year that they make it past the first round.
Now, one important thing that the Leafs have this year that they didn't have last year, that's the fans. This place is going to be packed in here today. Obviously, out in Maple Leaf Square, there's going to be a large contingent of fans watching on the big screen out there, despite the fact that the weather's not the greatest right now. So that could be a big boost for the Leafs as well going into this series. Head-to-head with Tampa this year, they split the season series 2 games apiece. The Leafs finished 5 points ahead of Tampa in the standings in the regular season. It was the best season statistically for the Leafs ever, finishing with 115 points. But again, they are facing the two-time Stanley Cup champions, the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions in the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Dwight, this is not going to be an easy series by any stretch of the imagination.
I was feeling good about that anybody but Boston, but now not so much, Greg. Thank you, sir. So what will it be like for those folks out in Maple Leaf Square celebrating our Leafs in the playoffs tonight, Colin?
Yeah, and Dwight, I'm just saying, anybody but Boston and maybe Tampa Bay, but, we're going to be okay. I'll tell you, I'll answer that question in that I'm really glad our games are tonight and Wednesday night in terms of the fans that are out there supporting, because tomorrow night would not be a good scene, going to be very, very wet. I know there's been still a few sprinkles tonight, but really it's not going to be that bad, and Wednesday we'll see improving conditions into those evening hours. So let's walk you through things here. These are the current temperatures that we're looking at. So it's 12 degrees in Toronto and 10 degrees in Kitchener and in Hamilton as well. Temperatures have been nearly steady. We did have a few sunny breaks, so the temperature popped up to 13 degrees and then kind of leveling off as the clouds fill back in. Winds generally are light. Now, we had that fog overnight last night and early this morning, the fog advisories with light winds again tonight, some patchy fog development development, so some of that lingers into the early morning hours. Just a few spotty showers, a little bit of drizzle that we're kind of seeing at this point here and there. Mostly it's moved off to the east. We'll even see some breaks developing through the overnight hours. And as we get into tomorrow, what really happens is we'll have a few breaks once we lose the fog, but into the afternoon and evening is when we get into wet conditions again, with even a few embedded thunderstorms possible for tomorrow. So I'll go into more detail on that. But once we get through that, we've got a really nice run that's coming our way. Let's hope we have a nice run when it comes to the playoffs too. 8 tonight, Dwight, and 12 for that high tomorrow.
Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
Beer seemed to work, so $1 a ride. That's the latest promise from the Ontario Liberal Party just days before the provincial election campaign officially kicks off. The reduced fare would apply to public transit everywhere in Ontario. Lisa Shing with the details.
We're going to deliver Buck a Ride province-wide.
Referencing the now infamous PC promise to offer Buck a beer 4 years ago, the Liberals are offering $1 per ride across all transit in the province until 2024 as a way to address affordability. They say it'll take 400,000 cars off the road each day.
We want to give Ontarians real pocketbook relief, not in 5 years, not in 10, but right away. Pocketbook relief for something that they value.
The Liberal plan would also deliver $40 monthly passes and make rides free for veterans. It'll cost about $700 million in the first year and $1 billion the following year. Sounds good to some riders.
I travel too often to downtown from Scarborough, so it's cheaper if it is going to be $1.
It sounds amazing. It should be longer than until 2024.
But not everyone is on board.
It was like the Buck a beer. Like, here's this like immediate gratification thing for you, so that you'll ignore this other stuff that's going on that's actually a lot more important.
Well, so interestingly, the Liberals are advertising this one as Buck a Ride.
No way. I mean, I guess it works. I don't know. Politics is awful.
I think transit prices are just going to go up, and they need to make money for the government, and that's probably not a good thing to cut because people need to take transit, so they need to pay for it.
So clearly not enough to sway your vote.
No, definitely not.
The NDP has a different plan for transit.
As we take the burden off of municipalities by paying half of the operating costs, that gives them a lot of room to address the cost of fares.
The Green Party is also promising to take on half of the transit operating costs permanently and cut fares in half for 3 months. The Liberals are promising $375 million in operating costs for municipalities. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The provincial election campaign will officially begin on Wednesday. CBC News has requested interviews with the leaders of all 4 major parties ahead of the June 2nd election day. Well, tonight we have some of Ontario Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca's conversation with our Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley. Mike began by asking Stephen Del Duca what he thinks will be the fundamental theme of this election.
I think people want competence over the circus that they've had for the last 4 years under the Ford Conservatives. They don't expect perfection from their leaders, but they do want to know that the woman or man leading this province and the team working with that woman or man actually have a responsible and thoughtful plan, are caring and competent enough to deliver on that plan, and keep the people of Ontario at the center of their focus or our focus. And that's what we're devoted to doing. That's what we're dedicated to doing. This idea of back and forth, the whipsaw, the whiplash effect of what we've seen over the past 4 years, not just during COVID, but the past 4 years. People don't want the circus to continue. They want competence, they want a responsible leader, and they want a team that knows how to get the job completed in the right way.
So are you saying that what Premier Ford and his team showed during the pandemic was not competence?
So I think if you look at the totality of the 4 years, from the reckless decisions to cut public health, to make life so much more difficult for municipal governments to meddle in municipal elections, the license plate fiasco, dragging us backwards so brutally in the fight against the climate crisis. I mean, there is a series of very reckless and irresponsible decisions that predate COVID. And then during COVID, to see repeatedly not listening to the evidence, not listening to the science, reopening too early, bringing in Doug Ford's own version of conservative COVID carding back in April of 2021, closing playgrounds instead of listening to the science table. I mean, the list goes on and on and on, where, again, I don't think people want or expect perfection, but they do demand competence and thoughtfulness and responsibility that is taken seriously by a leader, and Doug Ford does not have the capacity to do that. Ontario Liberals do. Between my experience and our new dynamic team, we will be able to take the bull by the horns, as they say, and start the job of rebuilding this province on day one.
So you're referring to competence a lot and your experience. So clearly, your experience as a minister in the Wynne government is what you're talking about here. What is it about your time in government that that gives evidence of that level of competence that you're
Well, I think
about?
just the very nature of understanding that, as I say all the time, the words themselves, giving speeches, standing at a podium, reading a teleprompter the way that Doug Ford does, that's not the job.
Right, but I'm talking about your experience.
And I'm coming to that, right? So that's not the job. That's a really important distinction, and no one has to teach me that, because I learned that. Serving in 2 senior cabinet positions, economic development and growth and transportation, being there to understand how you marshal the resources of a government to actually deliver on positive outcomes. That you don't just give a speech, then kind of disappear when the heavy lifting is required, that you have to be in it all the way through, that you actually have to make sure that the public service, doing the phenomenal work that they do, understands what needs to be delivered on, and then holding yourself and holding the entire team to account for delivering on those outcomes. It's not easy. Governing in good times is not easy. Governing in challenging times is not easy. I understand that. I don't need to learn on the job. I don't need to wait 6 months to understand what I want to deliver on. I know how to deliver this with the team, the new team that we have, starting that on day one.
To hear more of Mike's conversation with Liberal leader Stephen Del Duca, head to our website, cbc.ca/Toronto. As air travel ramps up across the country, passengers at some major airports are experiencing long lines and lengthy delays. The agency responsible for security screenings is blaming staffing shortages, but as Rafi Boudjikanian reports, the union representing its employees is pointing a finger at the federal regulatory penny pinching on wages.
Flight delays, security screenings, check-ins. There is only so much patience some passengers can pack.
This is ridiculous. This is really not well organized. It was incredibly unclear where we were supposed to be after we went through the electronic kiosks.
I think my flight's at like 4, and I got here at like 11. I'm like, I'm not missing my flight.
I don't know. I just followed the Air Canada app, which it gives you instructions on what time to get here, and they said by 12 for a flight at 3. So I'm hoping that gets me through in time.
Across the country, issues reported in Vancouver since last week as well.
We have been waiting this line this whole time, so we have been waiting by now for 2 hours. So I'm just afraid to lose the plane.
The Canadian Air Transport Security Authority blames pandemic-related staff shortages for fewer agents available at security screening lines, but its union of employees says it's not so simple.
They failed to properly train and skill employees.
Dave Flowers says wages are low for screening agents, and current bargaining talks do not appear likely to change that.
Quite frankly, they're offering 0%. So, 0% won't fly.
Something the government wouldn't comment on, as CATSA is an independent crown corporation. But Ottawa says relief is coming eventually.
Weeks to get back to full level of service that is needed. Yep. But the infusion of resources is happening immediately. Now, are we going to see elimination of lineups immediately? I'll be honest with you, I don't think so.
In the meantime, CATSA says get to the airport 2 to 3 hours before your flight. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News.
Automaker Stellantis continues to charge Canada's auto industry forward, today announcing multi-billion-dollar investments for Ontario plants. Chris Ensing has more.
Windsor's minivan plant is going fully electric.
Once again, the industry is evolving, and we're transitioning to an electrified future.
Stellantis will spend $3.6 billion here and in Brampton. It allows both lines to build fully electric vehicles powered by batteries built by the automaker's recently announced joint venture with LG Energy Solutions, a $5 billion plant in Windsor. Today's investment promises to return both plants to a 3-shift operation once retooled in 2024. Until today, Brampton's 3,000 employees had nothing to build beyond next year.
It's been an amazing first 100 years. We're super proud to have the foundation laid for the next 100.
That foundation, built with an additional $1 billion pitched in by taxpayers, the provincial and federal government investing nearly $500 million each. The Prime Minister joking about the calls he gets from Federal Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, François-Philippe Champagne, today.
I sort of shudder every time my phone rings and it's François-Philippe, because I know there's another deal coming down the pipe that's going to, yes, boss, it'll cost us a little bit of money, but it's going to bring in so many more jobs and much more money that it's a good thing.
This announcement promises a new research and development facility in Windsor, the first in North America for the company. It brings 650 high-paying engineer jobs.
What today confirms is Windsor's place at the heart of the automotive renaissance is clear.
There's one question remaining. What exactly will Windsor and Brampton build?
There's a time and a place. Today is not that time or place when we're going to share what those models are.
Stewart expects to say more in the coming months, ensuring Ontario's year of auto announcements rolls on. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
NDP leader Andrea Horwath is promising to hire more internationally trained nurses if her party wins the election.
We have people who are trained around the world who have to sit on the sidelines and not be able to provide the care that people need.
Horwath says the NDP would immediately provide jobs for 2,000 nurses. She adds the NDP would then move to quickly recognize the credentials of 15,000 nurses. A Toronto woman is calling for accountability after witnessing a racist incident during an Uber ride. She even recorded the video when the driver used the N-word toward her friend. But instead of an answer from the company, she was charged nearly $300 for damage to the car she says she didn't do. So she's decided to go public with her story. Rosa Marcatelli reports.
So I'm just asking you to please drop us off where we're supposed to go.
We don't want to walk.
Helen Turk hit record when the driver began demanding she and her friend, who's black, get out of the car before their trip was over because the ride was taking too long in traffic. They refused. Then this happened.
You have somewhere else to be, don't you, man?
Shut the f*** up, you f***ing
How can you even say that? Like, nobody's allowed to say that. I was shocked.
The university student contacted Uber several times with the video and her complaint, asking if the driver was still working for the company. Weeks later, she still didn't have an answer.
They're like, oh, we're investigating. What are you investigating? You just need to watch the video.
Then things took another turn. Uber charged Turk's credit card almost $300, saying the driver claimed she'd damaged his side mirror and she would have to compensate him.
I didn't damage a mirror, and it's ridiculous to charge me out of the blue.
Uber never told Turk what action, if any, it took against the driver. Instead, she heard through Go Public that the company says it removed him from the platform as soon as it became aware of the incident. But when asked for details and dates, since Turk had to report the incident several times, Uber refused. The company says Uber does not tolerate any form of racism. It also has a detailed zero-tolerance policy. But an expert who provides diversity training says Uber needs to walk the talk when faced with real-life situations.
They didn't communicate with the person who was affected by the behavior, and that is where the problem lies.
2 years ago, this Uber passenger said the same thing happened to her.
He turned around and said, effing N-word, get out of the car.
Uber later added anti-racism commitments and material to its website.
But you didn't. Helen, it's okay. That's what it's...
In this latest case, Turk's friend asked not to use his name, saying the focus should be on Uber. At the very least, Turk says the company should apologize to him.
I'm the one with the Uber account, but he's the actual victim.
The driver couldn't be reached for comment. Uber refunded the charge for the mirror after hearing from Go Public. Turk says she's stopped using the ride service. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
Toronto Police Chief James Raymer says hate crimes in the city have gone up more than 20%. Speaking at a board meeting this morning, the chief says events happening in other cities across the world have contributed to the spike.
As members of law enforcement, it is important for us to remember that we do not police in a vacuum. Events including the current global pandemic, the 2021 Atlanta spa shooting in the United States, and the vehicle attack that killed 4 Muslim family members in London, Ontario, all had local impacts.
The service says there were 257 hate-motivated incidents in 2021, up from 210 the year prior. Police add East and Southeast Asian communities have been targeted the most for violent acts, but Black and Jewish communities are more often targeted for mischief-related incidents. The sexual assault trial for Jacob Hogart, lead singer of Headley, began today in Toronto after several delays caused by the pandemic. Hogart was arrested and charged in 2018 for alleged incidents involving a woman and teenager that police say took place in the Toronto area 2 years earlier. Deanna Sumanak has more.
The sexual assault trial of the Canadian rock star Jacob Hogart had been postponed several times for several years now, actually, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but people waiting for those opening statements by both the Crown prosecutors as well as Hogart's defense team are going to have to wait a little while longer. We're still in the jury selection phase of this trial. That jury selection is now going to be taking place on Wednesday. What we're talking about, up until the year 2018, Jacob Hogart was best known as the front man of the band Headley. They were Juno winners. He hosted the Junos himself. And then in 2018, a bombshell. The Toronto police had said that 2 women had pressed criminal charges against Hogart relating to 2 alleged incidents of sexual assault dating back to 2016. One of the women was an adult and the other accuser was a teenager at the time. Hogart pleaded not guilty when he was charged and arrested in 2018, and in 2019 he requested a trial by jury rather than by a judge. And then of course the pandemic happened and many trials by jury were postponed, which brings us to today. And certainly in the weeks to come, the public, Jacob Hogart's fans, and many survivors of sexual assault are all going to be keeping a close eye on what happens to this trial in this post-Me Too era. The trial is expected to wrap up sometime in early June. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Efforts are on the way to evacuate some civilians from a besieged Ukrainian steel mill in Mariupol, which is now mostly under Russian control. The UN and Red Cross are overseeing the complex operation after high-level negotiations with Russia and Ukraine. Ellen Mora has the details now from Kyiv.
Civilians rescued from the Azovstal steel factory. After weeks sheltering underground, under bombardment, finally they can see the sun. These are some of the first people who escaped the factory. This woman was stuck inside with her baby for 2 months. About 100 civilians were evacuated from the plant on Sunday, a complicated effort led by the United Nations and the Red Cross. After many attempts, meetings, and proposals, finally, says Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, there was not one day when we did not try to save our people. Natalia Uzmanova was trapped in the factory since March. I can't believe it, she says. Now we won't have to use a bag as a toilet. We were scared. Still, as some escape, it's believed hundreds more remain trapped. The evacuation was paused last night after Ukrainian forces say the factory again was hit by Russian shelling. There was little sign the evacuation resumed today. People are under the rubble. This commander of the Azov regiment, also holed up in the plant, says we hear them talking. The evacuees from the factory are supposed to travel about 230 kilometers to Ukrainian-controlled Zaporizhia. That's where dozens who were able to finally flee from other parts of Mariupol arrived today. God forbid this happens to anyone else, this woman says. We will need lots of therapy, the children too. Thousands remain in Mariupol, living in horrific conditions. But for those who've gotten out, now some desperately needed relief, fleeting though it may be, in this country under attack. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Kyiv.
Israel is calling a comment by Russia's foreign minister unforgivable. In an interview with an Italian news channel, Sergei Lavrov said Adolf Hitler had Jewish origins. He went on to claim that some of the biggest anti-Semites were Jewish. The Kremlin appears to be trying again to justify the pretext that it is fighting Nazism in Ukraine, even though that country's leader is Jewish. Iris Mackler has more from Jerusalem.
По-моему, у Гитлера тоже была еврейская кровь.
There's a mixture of fury and incredulity here. We heard from Israel's foreign minister, who is himself the son of a Holocaust survivor, and he said this was outrageous, it was untrue, and it was unforgivable. He said that, in fact, Ukrainians are not Nazis. Only the Nazis were Nazis, and only the Nazis planned and carried out the extermination of the Jews. He's calling in Russia's ambassador here and demanding a retraction and an apology. Other cabinet ministers have come out in support of this stand, and they say it's delusional and actually just a pretext or a justification for Russia's own actions in Ukraine.
The statement of Foreign Minister Lavrov is false, is despicable, and is deemed of the strongest condemnation. He's basically engaging in Holocaust inversion, making the victims of the Holocaust the perpetrators. And that is inexcusable. And the Holocaust should be kept completely apart from propaganda in this war.
Canada also came up because Lavrov went on to say that the United States, and especially Canada, was involved in training neo-Nazi units in the Ukrainian army. It's all part of the same rhetoric, all part of the same justification for this military action that began on February the 24th and is still ongoing. Or some might say it's a pretext for this military action, an attempt to justify Russia's own actions inside Ukraine.
Iris Mackler, CBC News, Jerusalem.
You are looking at some incredible images of a tornado that tore through a city in Kansas on Friday. This drone footage was captured in Andover, which is just outside of Wichita. The tornado was listed as an EF3 with winds of up to 260 kilometers an hour. Tragically, 3 meteorology students who were in Kansas to chase the storms died in a car crash on their way back home to Oklahoma. Just a terrible tragedy down there with those students, Colin.
Oh, yeah, young, budding scientists. Yeah. Absolutely tragic there. And that footage, to have drone footage, to see how the tornado moves and those dynamics. About 1,000 buildings were, blown up or destroyed with that, and yet there were no injuries, or at least any extreme injuries or deaths. So pretty incredible. Now, what do I have here? I have the radar imagery, not going back. Sometimes I go and I pick it up and show you what happened and how it looked at the time of the event. This isn't from the weekend. This is, remember, it's the Midwest Central Time Zone. So actually that last frame, very, very near right now in terms of what's happening. Here's Wichita. Andover is basically a suburb of Wichita, and another line of very strong storms going through there and through Oklahoma as well. These red boxes, those are tornado watches, severe thunderstorm warnings, and even south of Oklahoma City there and on the border between Oklahoma and into Arkansas, a couple of tornado warnings in there as well. So again, tonight they're looking at, this is denoting hail, some straight line winds, and potentially at least one tornado at this point, which has touched down. So active weather there in the Midwest, in Tornado Alley again tonight. What do we have now? Well, we are looking at some areas of fog developing again tonight, like we had last night, but probably not quite as difficult to get through or to burn off, so we won't see as much of it. Morning breaks tomorrow in the cloud cover, and then showers turning to rain, periods of rain, and even into the evening, a few embedded thunderstorms possible. It will get warmer by Wednesday, so we are going to get into the clear. We got to get through what's happening tomorrow. Daytime highs today, a few sunny breaks. I know they were short-lived, but we got up to 13. That action from today's weather, mostly to the east. It's what's coming in for tomorrow. We get into this into the afternoon. Here's lunchtime. Then we see that really developing and pushing through. But you know what? Into Wednesday, we are going to see some very rapid clearing and that sun coming out in the afternoon. And that's why Wednesday's looking up. And same with the end of the week as we push through tomorrow, Dwight.
Looking up is right. We like those numbers. Thank you, Colette.
You're welcome.
Muslims in the city are celebrating Eid today as Ramadan comes to an end, and for many celebrating, it's the first big Eid commemorations since the pandemic began.
The festive day, all day we celebrate, going and meeting people, and it's a festive day. We go and meet people every day and all day for 3 days, and it's a celebration with the feast, with the good food and everything.
We can say Happy Eid, Eid Mubarak, Happy New Year. You can say any kind of celebration.
There you go, Eid Mubarak. Celebrations were held across the city, including downtown, where thousands of families came together, even partaking in an Eid carnival. In the East End, Mayor Tory joined worshippers for prayers at a mosque in Scarborough. As we head to break, let's take a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX closed down by 70 points. The Dow went up by 84 points. And the dollar traded lower at 77.55 cents U.S. We'll be right back. Raptors fans can breathe a sigh of relief tonight, addressing rumors that he could be heading to the Lakers. Coach Nick Nurse says his focus is on Toronto.
Well, first of all, I mean, I don't know where that stuff comes from, right? And I'm focused on coaching this team. How about that?
Nurse has been mentioned as a front-runner to replace Frank Vogel, who was fired as head coach of the Lakers after the LeBron James-led team failed to even make the playoffs. Nurse has 2 years left on his contract with the Raptors. For a second-day long lineup stretch in front of the Montreal Canadiens arena as people visited the casket of Guy Lafleur. The funeral is tomorrow, but for many, this was the last goodbye. Sarah Levitt reports.
A whole lot of love coming for Guy Lafleur, both inside and outside the Bell Centre. It's the second day of public visitations. Inside is his casket and members of his family welcoming people who want to come and pay their respects. Over 2 days, thousands of fans flocked to the Bell Centre to do exactly that and share their stories of a man who obviously had a big impact on people's lives, whether it's Quebecers or Canadians, some people traveling from the United States just to pay their respects.
He was one of my few heroes in my life. I grew up during the 70s and watched all those games and would run to school after they won the Stanley Cup and hug my friends and stuff. So he's just a huge part of growing up.
My favorite number is 10, and I've always been a huge fan of his and saw him play a couple times as well.
Guy was my idol as a youngster. Of course, I remember him with all the great Stanley Cup that he provided us. And more recently, after his retirement as a human being, I had the chance to meet him once. I have my picture with him, actually. And so I really want to come here and don't miss this.
Quebec has pulled out all the stops for Guy Lafleur. His funeral will be held tomorrow. It's what's called a national funeral reserved for people who obviously had a big impact in Quebec. Guy Lafleur, obviously one of them. It'll start with a procession that will start here at the Bell Centre and then go to Mary, Queen of the World Cathedral, which is just a few blocks away. And then the funeral will be held starting at 11. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
We are just over 30 minutes away from the start of the Stanley Cup playoffs. The Leafs haven't made it past the first round since 2004, but if they're going to do it, it's this year. They'll have to beat the defending champs, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Greg Ross joins us live from Maple Leaf Square. And Greg, a tough matchup here, Greg, but at least Leaf Nation will be there to give them that extra boost.
Yeah, and you know what? It turns out the Leafs have their good luck charm here in Maple Leaf Square tonight. And that's Mayor John Tory, a.k.a. Abe Lincoln over here. Can you just let the people at home
Is that really Tory dressed up?
Here? Why are you and your friends dressed up like this?
We're here to cheer on the Leafs. Is that not obvious? And they're going to go a lot further, deeper into the playoffs than ever before. We'll leave it at that. And we're here, first game, first series, to cheer them on, and we're a good luck charm. Mark my words.
So this is a tradition, I would like to say annual tradition, but the Leafs don't make the playoffs every year, so not an annual tradition, but you guys do it every time they make the playoffs.
19 years with a few interruptions because they didn't make the playoffs, but when they make it, we're here.
And what's the record for you guys here when you come to watch the Leaf game?
It's very solid. But you have Austin Powers, you have the King, you have Ron Burgundy, Tiger Woods.
I gotta say it's about 8-0. Like
we're hot.
8-0. Have the Leafs actually made the playoffs 8 times in the last 19 years?
Definitely, absolutely. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to do the math on that one.
Dude, Montreal, Ottawa, we've had some road trips.
All right. So do we have any? Anchorman's here. He's going to do an interview. But I'll tell you, these guys are confident. The fans behind them, Dwight, are confident that the Leafs are going to pull it out tonight. But as you said, it is going to be a difficult task. The Leafs have to face the Tampa Bay Lightning tonight, the 2-time defending Stanley Cup champions. And let's face it, there are a lot of people outside of this city that believe the Leafs don't have a chance. So we'll see if the Leafs can finally get over that hump and get past the first round. And these guys will be inside cheering tonight.
Thank you, Greg. Oh, I love how the mayor gets into it there, Colin.
I love that, too. And, like, you just don't expect to see those 6 individuals that would be together, right? Stay classy, Toronto. Tiger Woods looking well. Let's show you what's going on here. So we do have some fog, perhaps tonight, a little drizzle, but really things aren't going to be too bad down there. Just maybe a tiny bit feeling cool for our fans. Tomorrow things will be changing, though, weather-wise, because drier in the morning, maybe even a few sunny breaks, kind of hard to come by, but then getting into rain into the afternoon and even some embedded thunderstorms possible into those evening hours. As we get towards Wednesday, though, the second half of the day is looking very good, so we will get some clearing and some improvement then.
Thank you, Colette, and we're liking the Maple Leaf blue there.
Of course.
That's our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Kelda has you covered. Actually, you're not going to see Kelda tonight. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Stay safe, everybody.